Okay, hello everybody. We are going to be talking about a bunch of questions that you guys have started posing to us. I am Jason Hennig, if you don't know me. If you do know me, then you know me. This is Justin, so please introduce yourself, Justin.
Yeah, all right. I'm Justin, Justin Suida. I'm from Albuquerque, New Mexico, actually. Just moved up to Washington in the last couple of months. And I'm not necessarily super familiar with the Bible or general Christian, I guess, theology, but it's something I'm really interested in and have been reading a bit in, and I'm just really excited to finally just get some questions answered and talk about it.
Cool.
And also, you might also know me or remember me as Esau in some of the videos and that guy.
Yes. Just recently in the Sunday school videos, that was the Lenten ones. You were the...
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So, anyway, we have not yet named the show, and we'll come up with a name by the end of it, because this is going to be multiple episodes, because we're going to be chatting for a long enough time that we're not going to put this in one video. So, while we're still thinking of names for this show in our heads, I'm going to talk about these books that I've got here, because we did a lot of research in order to get these questions answered. This book is called A Summary of Christian Doctrine. You can't see the name of it. I'm going to put it really close. It was written in 1952. Actually, it was written in like 1931, and it was rewritten in 1952. But that doesn't really matter. What really matters is that it is a summary of Christian doctrine. It explains all the basics of Christian doctrine. Very simple. I use this one a lot because it talks about the government, and we'll be talking about the government. Christian dogmatics, also written in the 50s. Actually, I think it was also written in the 30s and then rewritten in the 50s. It's a theme. I don't know what it is about religious books being rewritten after World War II.
Or just religious books in general being written.
Well, yes, that is a thing that happens. Religious books sometimes get rewritten, which is sort of interesting, because you'd think the dogmatics and the doctrine wouldn't change much, but here we are. So, this one is the sort of bigger, thicker book, but I think it's sort of more of an overview, at least with my experience with it. I have not read either of them in thorough detail. I used their excellent indices to get the questions answered. But most importantly, we have the Holy Bible. It doesn't say Holy Bible on it, but, well, it does on the side. And it's a journaling Bible, which is actually why I brought it, because journaling Bibles are really cool, and you should get one. You can't really see it very well on here, and I'd put it really close, but you probably wouldn't be able to see it very well there either. But it's got a column where you can make notes on the side, which is awesome and excellent. So I thought I'd bring it. Normally I use an electronic Bible for the exact same thing. Okay, we're back from a very early cut. Justin had to go let somebody in, and in the meantime, I've been thinking of a name. I still didn't think of a name. By the end of this discussion, we will have a name for this show, and it'll be an excellent name.
It will be the best name.
That is correct. You had a question that actually isn't on this, so if you want to bring that up, go ahead.
Yeah, so I guess something I've been wondering in sort of my own, I guess, venture into the Bible, I guess, is that sort of it seems like throughout sort of Exodus and Genesis in the Old Testament that it seems that God almost makes, not necessarily I wouldn't call it a mistake, but he has actions that he realizes were not the best decision. And I I guess, makes me think, like, he talked to Noah after the flood and said, I will never flood the earth again. And realized that he probably shouldn't have done that, or should have, regardless. I don't want to get into that, but does this sort of imply that, I guess, God sort of developed his omniscience and didn't have it from the start?
That is a good question, and but we know from Genesis. It's going to be hard for me to find the exact quotes because, like I said, I'm not prepared for these ones. But we know from Genesis that God has always known and will always know what's going to happen all the time. David says it in Psalms. He says he's known every human being as he was knit in his mother's womb. Everybody has already been known. The question where it sort of becomes one of those sort of mysteries is why God let it happen then.
Yeah.
Right? But we know he knew it was going to happen, and we know he knew he was going to have to flood the earth. But nonetheless, he allowed those events to transpire, which actually I'll sort of get into later, but since that's in ages, I'll give a brief overview. That's sort of our fault, actually. As human beings, because we live in sin, the world is broken and sinful. And a lot of people wonder why God doesn't just wave a magic wand and fix everything. That's because he doesn't. God knows better than we do, and God decided to give us free will. And waving his magic wand would remove the free will.
Exactly.
And so, like, this isn't the best answer that I could possibly give you, but suffice it to say, God has always known everything, and these things that he has chosen to do all ultimately lead to the culmination of his plan, which is inevitably the resurrection of Jesus Christ, and then the inevitable return of Jesus Christ, and then everyone who has heard of Jesus and believes in Jesus going to heaven. That is the ultimate fruition of God's plan, and everything in here, everything out there, builds into that plan, one way or another, whether we realize it or not. Even bad things he works into the plan. Joseph and Jacob and Esau, you were in that, and they had a lot of butting heads, which one might say were not exactly A+ on the moral scale, but and Jacob tricked Esau, and he tricked his father, and he tricked people really bad. But God still was like, look, no matter what happens, my plan will come through, and
You're gonna do this regardless of what you do beforehand.
Exactly. This
sort of
will
like
happen.
He sets like these landmarks, and sort of the mingling where the river bends is sort of what free will is.
Yes. Yes.
That's really interesting. And also something I've been thinking, like, as you're talking about that, almost as if, like, God presents sort of almost like a human sort of figure in conversation when he talks to those old figures, where, but I guess another thing, like, when he says, maybe I shouldn't have flooded the earth, or I won't do that again, that's sort of the human God coming out, and less so, I guess, think like he, to converse with humans in a way, God, I don't know.
He's in the Bible for us to understand.
Yeah, so he, I guess, tries to relate on a human level, and I guess breaks down into that sort of. Am I making sense?
Yeah, you're making sense. I'm
kind of mumbling a bit.
God does want us to be able to understand him. He's not just mystically floating away somewhere where we won't be able to reach. While we certainly can't sit at the throne of God, he gave us all these words, and he speaks to us in plain words. Which is why I think it's helpful to have a book like this. Once again, a plug. But I think it's helpful to have a book that's in plain language.
Yeah,
because,
definitely.
King James Version was written in plain language at the time. There's the archaic speech of the Bible is not the intended purpose. The intended purpose is for people to be able to understand and know what God is saying. And like you said, you can see that character of God when he's talking to the patriarchs. He's being very human. So speaking of the patriarchs, and you have been reading a couple of the books in the Old Testament, is that correct?
Yeah, I have. So I've read pretty much all of Exodus and Genesis, and then plus a few snippets here and there.
Cool. So would you tell us what you thought?
It was really interesting. So backstory is for a class, which is it's called the Western Tradition, Ancient World, basically. So it's looking at how the Western tradition, Western culture, and how our culture really got here from these ancient texts. We also looked at some Greek and Roman texts and sort of some Babylonian texts. And so we're really just trying to understand, like, where do these peoples get their idea of creation from? And in that sense, I was really sort of blown away of just, I guess, I don't know, like, you hear all the stories, like, of course I'd heard the story of Noah and Moses and all that, but the stories aren't really what the Bible says and what, they say happened. And Yeah, it's just been really interesting helping put into perspective too, like my own beliefs, and also how I think helping me just understand the Christian faith a lot more. And that wasn't even the focus of the class. That's just me reading the Bible and the effect it's had on me.
That's really cool. And if you've read some of the New Testament as well, right? You were telling me the Gospel of Mark and Acts of the Apostles,
Yes,
right?
that's right.
So, fun story. We're actually talking about Acts of the Apostles in Sunday school right now. What did you think of Mark and Acts?
I honestly really don't have much of an opinion on it. I'm not familiar with it enough to really comment on it. I think I am still reading through it, and I'm sort of like at the beginning. Really, I haven't studied it enough to
Gotcha.
really
All right.
formulate a thesis.
That's fine.
Yeah.
It's good to hear that you're enjoying what you've read so far, though.
Oh yeah,
that's
no.
cool.
It's something this summer I'm planning to actually go back and try and fill in the blanks along and just look at it as both a holy text and also as a piece of literature too.
Oh yeah, I mean actually, at the risk of being excommunicated,
I'm from New Mexico. We have the penitentes. They're the kings of excommunication.
Job. There are a number of people who have argued that Job was written as a play.
Really?
Actually, yes. Which is not to say that it is not, the divinely inspired word of God. Making a note here, I am not saying that Job is not canonically scriptural. Don't get the wrong idea. No, Job is definitely canonically scriptural, but it is. There are a lot of people who have said that it is a play. Which is a super interesting way to read it, and I would highly recommend Job as well. That question that everybody asks, why do bad things happen? Job's your man.
Job will tell you.
Job's your man. He sat and whined at God for a couple chapters.
Oh, wow.
Well, so Job, rich man, well off, because he was very faithful to God. But then God and Satan made a bet. And Satan said, I bet I can make this man turn against you. And God's like, no, you can't. And so Satan's like, all right, let me do anything I want to him. And God's like, his faith will not be shattered. So Satan does. He wrecks his house, kills his children. Satan allows every bad thing to befall Job. He's covered in warts and blisters and horrible, horrible. And he sits there and asks, why, God? Why the heck would you do this to me? And it's a great book because God sits there and is just like, look, man, did you make the world? Do you know everything? Are you the father of the rain? And so it's a wonderful, wonderful book.
That's really interesting, actually. Really
interesting. It is a very interesting book, and I think it's very underappreciated. I'd highly recommend it. So
I will add that to my reading list.
All right. Now, so we've sort of talked about a bunch of things that we're going to be talking about, and we still don't have a name for this, but it's already been almost 15 minutes, so we'll be back shortly. You've just watched an episode of Put It on the Table, whether we knew that was the name of it at the time or not. If you liked it, go ahead and click like. If you have a question you'd like us to answer or something you'd like to see, go ahead and put that in the comments. If you want to see more stuff like this, go ahead and click that subscribe button. Thank you.